For a huge NFL wildcard weekend, it's all about the QBs. Stephen A., we start with you. Over or under 224.5 passing yards against the Steelers Saturday?
I'm going to go under with this. Number one, because I think that Flowers is not going to be healthy. And number two, because I think Monken's going to be smart enough to give it to Derrick Henry to run down the Steelers' throats, and he's not going to need to throw for over 224.5 yards. I'm going to go with the under here with Lamar Jackson.
Okay, now we move to another MVP.
There are going to be teams out there that have watched the way that the Pittsburgh Steelers season has ended and wonder whether they should call the Steelers to see if they should inquire about whether the Steelers would be willing to move on from Mike Tomlin and move him to another organization. I don't think Pittsburgh will do that. That has not been what they've been about, and there's no indication that they would. But I do think there are teams wondering whether they should lob in a call just to see if they could stir Pittsburgh's interest.
All right, it's hard to imagine Mike Tomlin not as the head coach of the Steelers. Meanwhile, Pittsburgh faces Baltimore in the playoffs Saturday with Tomlin's team riding a 4-game losing streak. From the AFC North to the NFC North, take a listen to Bears GM Ryan Pohl on if his team's ready to go all in for a new head coach.
There's going to be some names that you don't expect that are going to surprise you because we're digging deeper than we ever have before.
That's a wild card. Stephen A., this is your team, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I know how highly you think of Mike Tomlin. Do you think he should consider leaving Pittsburgh for Chicago?
I think, yes. The answer to that question would be yes. I love Mike Tomlin. I hope he doesn't leave. But I want to make sure I emphasize what I'm saying here. There does come a point in time, and I'm not saying that is the case yet with the Pittsburgh Steelers, but there does come a point in time where you have to ask yourself a question, is a new voice and a new vision required? The Pittsburgh Steelers, 6 Super Bowl championships on their resume, with only 3 coaches in its history, Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, now Mike Tomlin. They know how to pick coaches. You have 0 playoff victories since 2016. 0. Now, again, I love me some Mike Tomlin, and I don't want him to leave. But I remember when Don Shula ultimately was let go. I remember when Tom Landry was let go. And I would always say to folks, players get interchanged all the time. Players are let go all the time. We move on from players every single day. They moved on from Joe Montana. This is what happens. And so I look at they moved on from Peyton Manning. This is what happens. So why is it sacrilegious to bring that up when it comes to a coach? It's not like you're saying he doesn't deserve to be a head coach. It's not like you're diminishing his quality and what he brings to the table. But if I'm a franchise, I can tell you this much for me personally. Somebody, I'm sorry to brag, but who's accustomed to being number one. That's what we do at First Take. We're accustomed to being number one. I got news for you. Ain't no way in hell I'm going to be a part of a team that can't win a playoff game in 9-10 years. If I'm the owner, if I'm the boss, I got to look at that hard. And I got to say, yes, it might be on me too, but we ain't had playoff victory since 2000.
I'm just not sure that falls on Mike Tomlin more so than the personnel, Dan.
Okay, so if you're asking me, should Mike
More
Tomlin entertain leaving the Steelers
Yes.
for the Bears? Sure. Sure, if you're Mike Tomlin.
Right.
Because you haven't got me a quarterback. Now, do I think that the Steelers should entertain trading Mike Tomlin? I've seen that obviously had in the conversations. I think it's the dumbest thing I've heard in the NFL this season, that the Steelers should entertain moving on from Mike Tomlin. If we had to look at the last, let's call it the 6 or 8 years of Mike Tomlin's run with the Steelers, really ever since Ben got old and they have had to figure out the quarterback position, have they exceeded expectations in Pittsburgh, realistic ones? I know the ultimate goal is Super Bowl. Have they exceeded expectations?
I believe so.
Why?
Because they didn't had a quarterback.
No, but why have they exceeded them?
Because
of Mike Tomlin.
Because of Mike
We'd always
Tomlin.
say you don't count out a Mike Tomlin team. He always has winning seasons.
Have they fallen short of the ultimate goal?
Yes.
Yeah.
Why?
Because they don't have a
Because they don't have a
quarterback.
quarterback.
Bang. So if you're Pittsburgh, the reality is you don't have a Mike Tomlin problem. He's in 12 out of his 18 seasons. He's exceeded the expected like preseason win totals. Okay,
but
you haven't had a quarterback, and where the Steelers failed is all great organizations, whether we want to like it or not, and whether we think the Atlanta Falcons were stupid or not this year for Michael Penix. Favre to Rodgers. They went from Alex Smith to Patrick Mahomes, Joe Flacco to Lamar Jackson, and then Rodgers to Jordan Love. The reality is the Steelers have failed Mike Tomlin, not getting him a quarterback way more than Mike Tomlin has failed the Steelers.
Mel, before you jump in really quickly, you said Mike Tomlin should consider it. Do you think it's a better situation for Tomlin to be coaching Caleb Williams than it is with the Russell Wilson situation?
Heavenly Father, absolutely. Mike Tomlin, when Mike Tomlin has a good quarterback.
I don't know how highly you think of Caleb Williams. We haven't talked about the Bears much this year.
I think Caleb is remarkably talented. He's not perfect. He's remarkably talented. He absolutely needs to develop in some of the areas that he did not this year. But Mike Tomlin with the quarterback basically means you're going to go to the AFC Championship, which would be the NFC Championship game.
To me, it's not even about Caleb Williams. It's about, do you trust ownership? I mean, I'm not exactly sure that that's the place for you. I want to ask Stephen A. question. Because I agree with you that sometimes it's just the message is not cutting through anymore, and you have to move on. Many, many years ago in college football, it was Georgia moving on from a guy that they loved in Mark Richt, because even though he was always a perennial winner, he couldn't win that big one. And so they said, you know what, we're going to take our chances. We're going to move on from a guy who consistently gets us 10 wins in hopes that we can bring someone in who will get us 12, and one of those will be a natty. And ultimately it ended up working out. But in the NFL, where have you seen this blueprint of a very long-tenured coach leaving a team where he had championships and going to another team and that working? Because people keep trying to bring up Andy Reid. No. When Andy Reid was fired from the Eagles, I believe they had 4 wins that year, and they had missed the playoffs for 2 straight years. So, yes, they didn't know what they had in Philadelphia, but he had 14 seasons there, and ultimately he ended up having great success in Kansas City. But where? Where have you seen that work? And so, if you're Mike Tomlin, if you're the Steelers, where?
Tony Dungy?
Tampa
to Indy? And
he didn't win in Tampa Bay. I mean, it was his team that won, but yes.
I mean, he built a pretty darn good foundation.
It was his team that won. I get it. John Gruden has a ton to thank for him on that.
I got to go back at Dan for something. What would you consider to be an old quarterback?
An old quarterback?
Yes,
like
sir.
what age?
Age, yes, sir.
Like 30.
I think once you get to like 35, 36-ish.
Okay. So let me go back. So in 2016, the Pittsburgh Steelers lost in the conference championship game to the New England Patriots. That's their last playoff victory. Okay? Ben Roethlisberger was 34. The very next year, they lost in the divisional playoff game to Jacksonville.
Jags. Yep.
Blake Bortles. Mm-hmm. They gave up 45 points.
Okay.
They missed the playoffs over the next 2 seasons.
Yes, sir.
And then after that, they lost in a wild card game.
Baker.
To Baker Mayfield. Okay? They gave up damn near 40 points. I believe it was 40 points, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, they scored 40-something points.
48. I apologize. I'm just saying to you that wasn't about the quarterback. All I'm trying to say.
Well, if you don't have an offense, it does affect the defense.
Well, again, they scored 37 points that game. You understand? So what I'm saying to you is, all I'm trying to say is this. I love Mike Tomlin. Don't want him to go nowhere. Me personally, because I love what he stands for, what he represents. I just got a strong affection for the man, and his record speaks for itself in terms of his regular season and how the team overachieves. I'm just saying, when you haven't made when you haven't won a postseason game representing the Pittsburgh Steelers in 9 years, and it's about to go to 10 this Saturday night,
but
I do get to sit back and go like this. I might need to reevaluate things.
No, because here's my pushback.
I might need to do that.
No, here's my pushback.
Because it wasn't always about the absence of a quarterback.
But you also cannot make the comment of, well, maybe the message is getting stale when they're constantly in the playoffs. That's the playoffs are about players. The playoffs are about quarterbacks. So the message is clearly still being impacted or impactful because they are still winning and still getting the playoffs.
But what about we sit here right now?